unionized. Now, we currently have 3 districts under state control in any number of schools. Southborough, Lawrence, and Holyoke. What do they have in common? Poverty. The 3 of them have poverty. Now look at the level 4 and level 5 schools throughout the state. Schools, not school districts. They're all poverty. So I say to you, representatives of the people, the issue is not collective bargaining. The issue is not quality of teaching. The issue is poverty. And I would say in 2010, the push by the House Chair of the Education Committee at that time fit in very well with what was then a national viewpoint. Punitive. That was the view, punitive. So I emphasize again, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we are the best in the nation. We're 100% unionized. In the international math and science tests, we are the best in the Western world. Our kids are valuable, our kids are exceptionally important, and I submit to you that collective bargaining enhances their education. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions? Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would, don't think that this is an unintended consequence of what happened in 2010. This is clearly an injustice. We're the best in the world because we have the best teachers. I think we're going to fix this injustice and fix the question. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Representative, something you mentioned earlier. Representative Khan, you want to come up with you?
No, we're in a different group.
Okay.
But thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking me out of order. I'm Representative Corey Atkins, and I represent the 14th Middlesex District. I'm here today to ask your support for House Bill number 2870, which is an act relative to firefighters in the town of Concord. Unfortunately, the average price of a home in the town of Concord is $914,000. And we've had a 26% increase in the price of real estate in the last decade, making it very hard for our firefighters to be able to afford anything within close proximity. So we're asking for the same release that the town of Boxford for the same reasons back in 2007, so that we can have a broader recruitment area for our firefighters.
Thank you for your hard work. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Representative Khan? Yes. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Murphy and Chairman Casey. And we are on this present our chart. Is the Emily Washington, who is JVC Camcorder, is representing 24 members of our city council. We were involved with just thanks to everybody for me to become city council. And so I'm here actually. I want to thank you in the previous session. The bill I'm talking about today, House 3885, and that goes to special officers of the city of Newton. You were kind enough to grant us this legislation a year ago, or a session ago, and with that, it seems that we need to move the age up to 70. So in the last session, we put the age 65. This is for police officers who can work as details. And at the time, there were a number of police officers who had to take it early retirement and continue working on that with details. And it seems that some of them reached the age of 65 and they would like to continue working. And so we would like to raise the age to 70, from 65 to 70. So the bill doesn't change at all, it's just raising the age to 70. And 20 other municipalities throughout the Commonwealth have actually moved it up to 70 as well. So we're here to ask your indulgence to allow this, we voted unanimously in our Public Safety Committee and then as well on the floor of the then Board of Aldermen. These are experienced officers. That's what we want to be doing these details, and so we think that it makes sense to match the other 20 communities that have taken this step. Folks are living longer, they're very vibrant into older years, so we know that this would be a benefit to the city of Newton.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair, I'm glad that 70 is the new 60, 65. It's good for all of us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. The number of teachers. Second, Paul Georges. Paul. There's a panel coming up. Paul, Frank, Beth, Angela. And anybody else who wants to come up to that panel? I think you're marking as a panel, I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Might come up and facilitate.
You are welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Timothy, Chairman Murphy, and the members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mike Canavan. I'm legislative representative for the American Federation of Teachers of Massachusetts. This panel consists of local union leaders from page 2265. You heard some of the broad policy debate that Steve and Tom talked about. And they'll talk about their experiences in the school districts. Now, we've had a lot of experience in turnaround schools. A lot of experience. We've gone through turnaround situations where we turned around a school twice. And that was a Lynn experience. And we've had good experiences in districts, and we've had bad experiences in districts. And I'll turn it over to these folks here now. Perhaps we can do it in alphabetical order and start with the Boston. Or whatever.
We've had one.
Would it be alike?
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Frank McLaughlin. I'm president of the Lawrence Teachers Union. And before I begin, because I did prepare some formal remarks, which I will pass out to you. I'm a teacher. I believe in being prepared. I brought my lesson plan, and I brought you all homework. But before I begin, I would like to frame, or put you in a proper frame of the city of Lawrence. I did see you all on TV the other night at the Governor's State of the Commonwealth speech. And at the end of that speech, the governor singled out our receiver, Jeff Riley, with great accolade. And I appreciate that effort by the governor, because things have certainly changed in Lawrence since 2010. But to understand my remarks best, you have to understand Lawrence in 2010, and a lot of it really hasn't changed. It's the poorest community in the Commonwealth. 90% of the children that go to the school there are English language learners, recent immigrants. There's a high percentage of special education children. We have the highest free and reduced lunch in the Commonwealth. And we have the highest number of families living below the poverty line. And with that, in 2010, when we were put into level 5, our superintendent was in Salem Superior Court, where he was convicted and jailed for corruption and malfeasance. And our mayor at that time, who couldn't hire a permanent superintendent in the city of Lawrence, was being investigated by multiple federal and state authorities, which resulted in the jailing of several of his top aides. And now I'm going to begin my formal remarks. Good afternoon, and my name is Frank McLaughlin, and I'm the proud president of the Lawrence Teachers Union. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. As you know, Lawrence is one of, and if I testified this morning it would be 2, but now it's 3 school districts in Massachusetts placed under state receivership. The mayor, the current mayor, Dan Rivera, great guy. The receiver, Jeff Riley, great guy. And I share the same vision for a better future for the children of Lawrence. I want to reiterate the commitment of Lawrence teachers to their students and families. We work with Lawrence children every day. We see the grinding poverty, the hardships, and the families we face. We desperately want real solutions for our students, and we're working to do that. It is our strong desire to collaborate in a meaningful way with Receiver Riley and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and its Commissioner, Mitchell Chester. I am so proud of the work that we're doing now at the Henry K. Oliver School. And by the way, Henry K. Oliver was the treasurer of the Commonwealth during the Civil War. I'm a history teacher. And the AFT, the national, state, and local, at the national, state, and local levels, we're partners at this school. And there's been a tremendous turnaround effort in the school. And the union has provided an extraordinary length of technical assistance and resources, professional development, and expertise. It's really working into a model school. You know, with that, in 2014, this union in the city, we finally ratified a contract after being in receivership for 2 years and without a contract for 3 years. And that was delayed because of the Ed Reform Law. And all through the process of this collective bargaining, both the Lawrence Public Schools and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, because of this law, made it clear to us that they had no obligation to bargain in good faith over the terms and conditions of our employment. They believed that the education reform law trumped all collective bargaining laws. And we did file unfair labor charges. We do have the best attorneys. We did mediate, and we did get a contract. But the contract that we eventually ratified looked much more like the one that was about to be implemented. Virtually every important section included the sentence, "The superintendent retains final authority and his determination shall be final." Now my teachers voted for it, barely, because this is all we could do to retain our collective bargaining rights. This isn't Massachusetts. This isn't how collective bargaining should be. It was demoralizing and continues to be. But we have a chance today because the destruction of collective bargaining in Massachusetts is more than a legal issue or an educational issue. It's a moral issue. Teachers in every city and town in Massachusetts work under collective bargaining agreements. And you know, as President Tolman told us, that Massachusetts is #1 in the nation in achievement. The national data shows that states that don't have collective bargaining tend to be at the bottom of the pack on student achievement. So clearly, collective bargaining isn't an obstacle to student learning, as some may falsely say. In fact, collective bargaining is essential to the educational improvement process. And I'll give you a couple of reasons why. Collective bargaining guarantees teacher voice in creating and maintaining the most effective schools for teaching and learning, and teachers who are in the classrooms every day with children know best. Who knows better? And secondly, a stable collective bargaining agreement with fair and transparent rules give teachers the protection and safe space they need to advocate for their students without fear of retribution. You know, parents want protection for their teachers too, because it's in the best interest of the students and families. For teachers to feel safe and secure and to speak out on educational issues. And I do want to tell you, during the political turmoil in Lawrence, the union was the lone voice of reason that was speaking out against what was going on in that city. So, we've lost our collective bargaining. We've lost our voice. Fortunately, we're working with a reasonable receiver. But then that may not last. What happens when teachers' voices are silenced? What happens when they're taken away? The all too common result is that bureaucrats that are far removed away from the classroom will make poor decisions that will hurt kids. And that's simply wrong. So I know I've taken up a lot of your time. I want to wrap it up by giving you your homework. Are we ready? I'm asking your support I'm asking you to support Lawrence schools and students by restoring our collective bargaining rights, our voice, and fair treatment to the Lawrence teachers and the families of Lawrence. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Beth Contos. That was wonderful. One thing I want to bring up, collective bargaining, make sure that classrooms are not overcrowded. As it is at the high school level, in Salem, we can have 30 students in a classroom. If we didn't have a collective bargaining agreement, who knows what that would be, maybe 40. I'm the president of the Salem Teachers Union. I also am a social studies teacher, so we have a lot in common here. Suspending provisions of a collective bargaining agreement in the case of level 4 and 5 turnaround unfairly blames the teachers who have stuck through those difficult times. Level 4 or level 5 doesn't come overnight. Usually a teacher has been there for many years seeing this happen, or they willingly enter into that situation knowing that they spend long hours in the classroom and often spend a lot of their family time and their own personal money to enhance the class. As Tom Gosnell pointed out, all chronically underperforming schools or school districts have the same symptoms, poverty being number one. A large number of newcomers in need of language acquisition services, very expensive and time consuming. It takes time to learn a language. Nobody learns a language overnight. It's 5 to 8 years on average to become fluent. High numbers of students with special education needs, underperforming or underfunded or improper distribution of resources to these high-need schools. Instead of turning it over to some receivership that has a layer of built-in expensive management costs, why not redirect those funds and pinpoint it into the tutoring that needs to happen, to the supports that children that are acquiring a new language need. We need special educators, we need bilingual community outreach workers, adjustment counselors, and people who are going to engage families. If I could just tell you very quickly 2 stories in Salem, that's where I teach. 2 levels for elementary schools. One, great panic setting. The teachers were given 3 years to turn it around. 18 months in, city panicked and gave over to a charter system. The collective bargaining agreement was thrown away. Every teacher that was not licensed, was not tenured at that time, was released. Everyone else had to re-interview. Almost everybody fled because the hammer was coming down in a way that was not going to be pleasant for the children or the teachers. Many of the children that had means left that school or left the school district altogether. Now the city officials panicked and turned it over. We had that extra layer of management cost. No, it's 2 years later, there's still a level 4 school in the same building, new teachers, most of them with less experience, all of them with less experience. There are fewer children at a higher price tag. We have another elementary school that was also level 4. It was similar. It had a lot of high needs students. Instead of the panic that our leaders went through that first time, we made a administrative and union coalition, and we made our own turnaround plan. We are in the first year. We did a year of planning. We contacted Lynn. They had done it a couple of times, and we followed their expertise. And it was a collaboration between our administration, the union, the teachers are at the table. We have monthly meetings. It is a completely different situation. We have tenured teachers in place. We have people with 20 and 25 years experience still in the classroom making a difference. And what we really did, instead of paying for a management staff that would not give direct services to children, is we're using that money for additional paraprofessionals, for additional teachers, for bilingual counselors, for outreach into the family and bringing the families in on a regular basis. We're only a few months into the new model, but nobody's running, screaming, and yelling from the schools. We did not punish the teachers or the staff for the problems, and we have rewarded them for staying. We're supporting them.
We're offering additional services to both the students, the families, and the teachers. So in this case, panic did not rule the turnaround. The collective bargaining agreement was honored, and people with experience are still at the table. And that's really what we need.
Good afternoon. My name is Brant Duncan. I am the president of the Lynn Teachers Union, and I'd like to share a couple of positive stories where the Lynn community successfully turned around 2 level 4 schools, the Connery Elementary School and the Harrington Elementary School. Ironically, for me personally, I had worked at both of those schools over the last few years. I would like to add, just at the onset, that the labeling of our schools is a disservice to our communities, our students, and our educators. And the labeling of the Lynn community as a level 4 district has a significant detrimental effect. But I am proud to send my 2 daughters to Lynn Public Schools and offer a few thoughts of how collective bargaining and collaboration can positively impact student achievement. So the onset of the level 4 schools in Lynn, we initiated in collective bargaining with the Lynn School Committee. It was a collaborative and respectful process that honored the expertise of our teachers. It did so in a manner to establish some conditions that were put in place that enabled our students and schools to emerge from level 4 status. And I'm proud to say that we did that in 3 years. But some of the benefits to a respectful, collaborative negotiating process, we ensured a stable workforce in these 2 schools. We established structures for collaboration and time to collaborate. We established a robust tutoring support system to meet the needs of our students. We added a social worker, a librarian, a vice principal, supplemental teachers, pre-kindergarten classes, and focused professional development. Many of these aspects were not in place in 2 of our most neediest schools in the Lynn community. But I will say that it was the collaborative negotiation, the respectful negotiation that enabled our teachers to invest in their schools because they were part of the decision-making process. And that enabled them in the most difficult of circumstances, being labeled level 4, having less due process rights simply because they work with the most neediest of schools and students to emerge from that. So as we move forward, I respectfully encourage you to restore collective bargaining in level 4 and level 5 schools and districts. It is an important aspect to teacher voice and establishing the learning and working conditions most needed for our students in schools. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Angela Cristiani. I'm the political director at the Boston Teachers Union and am here on behalf of my colleagues who are not able to be here. Their testimony will be forthcoming in writing to you so you have a sense of what's actually happening on the ground in Boston. What you're hearing from my colleagues is you're hearing individual stories, but there's a common thread. They care about their students. The stories are different, but they're very much the same. Sitting here, I can't help but put on my clinical hat. Most of you know I'm a school psychologist. Even though I work full-time as the elected political director of the Boston Teachers Union, I take pro bono cases outside of the city and work with children across the Commonwealth. At the end of the day, unions are supposed to, and I can attest to my colleagues and the people I serve with, the focus of what we try to do is for children. People hear the word union and they push back. Unions stand for standards. That's why they're in place. As a school psychologist, I don't know what I would have done without the teachers union to ensure that my practice for every single child that I continue to work with is in place. Collaboration. You hear the word collective bargaining. I translate that to collaboration, and that's what you're hearing from my colleagues. Without everybody at the table, I can tell you as a clinician, it doesn't work. The goal is to make things better. Nobody wants bad people at the table. I mean, you can get into the debate of all of that. But if you have licensed people, licensed professionals, school psychologists, administrators, I mean, you're talking different unions, you know, some are not unionized. People who are part of the school community who are saying, we want to be at the table. Why wouldn't you have it? That I don't understand. Take away my elected position, take away all of the other things that I do. People are saying they want a voice, because at the end of the day, it makes a difference for the children. So, I ask that you put the hat on that collective bargaining has to do with collaboration, and to ensure that the best things in place get put in place for the children. There's no reason you wouldn't embrace that. There is no reason any professional or any elected official, because I do know, given my work with some of you I know, some of you I don't know, you care about your constituency, and I know you care about me. But please look carefully, because the voices are asking to be there for the children. And the ones who really win at the end of the day, if it's done right, are the kids. So please relook at it. Please look at this carefully. Please support this bill. The standards are in place for a reason from our end. We advocate for children. And as a professional who continues to work in schools and with children across this Commonwealth, I'm the same professional that worked at the charter school, at the Deborah School, same school psychologist, at Boston Latin School, Latin Academy, and I've gone out and I've gone to some lovely private schools and charter schools. I'm the same professional. People are asking to have a voice, so please embrace it.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Our very own Teachers Union Rep. Rebecca Cusick will be sitting at the table with you. I come from Fall River, and we've had our share of concerns, and I think you brought it up, Ms. McLaughlin, and someone before you with the last panel. Poverty becomes a problem here. And until we can figure out what are the resources we need, socio-economic, emotional, behavioral issues, how we can best address those early on, we'll still be dealing with these issues. I mean, you're not hearing these issues in these higher socioeconomic communities. You're just not. It's the Fall River, it's the Holyoke, it's the Springfield, the Bedford, the Lawrence, and I'll use those as my top 5, or shall I say 5 to 5. And we need to figure out a way, you know, as we look ahead to seeing what the foundation formula group is going to come up with, and if there's any tools, we've all got to get together to figure out how. I'm not excluding Boston or Salem for any reasons, but we have some serious pockets that require transformative investment. Otherwise, we're going to still be facing these issues. So I want to thank you for being on the front line and all you do.
Just a quick question, I guess. Being represented from Holyoke, I guess I'm just wondering, especially for Lawrence, has your superintendent / receiver made any comment on this bill? I'm assuming our commissioner will make a comment. Do we know?
They made no comment. It's the only thing I believe I can send you. I'll send you my list of my wish list on how to change it in Columbia. But it's helpful if you can work with people that are reasonable. So at the end of the day, everything comes down to working with people. And the receiver and I, we come at this very differently. But we've developed a good working relationship to resolve the problems. You know, I didn't think, particularly with the last superintendent that I had to deal with, that conflict wasn't the best way to go at it. And although we're making great strides in this Commonwealth, we are making great strides in education. Okay, that's why the immigrant population is coming to this Commonwealth. It's for the great job. We have this school in Lawrence, International High School. It's labeled a level 4 school, and right now what they're doing is they're reorganizing the high school and they're taking it apart. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, this is a great school. And the neediest population is coming to this school because they have what the neediest population needs. So they shouldn't be defined by the problem. They're the solution to the problem. And that's what you have to think about as you're dealing with these schools. And it's the teacher's voice that's brave enough with their collective bargaining laws to let the community know this. You know that when you're designated a level 5 school district, they take over the school committee too. Okay, they go in when you're a level 4, they fire the principals. So the only one that's speaking is the union. And any teacher that doesn't have professional status, they're hiding behind their desk. So we're the voice. And I think we're a reasonable voice. And I think Jeff Riley knows that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator Johnny, you're one talented individual. So maybe next minute you're in front of me.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, we have,
I thought I was seeing double.
Members of the committee, thank you so much for taking me on the journey. I'm here with Jesse Flynn from the Mass Fallen Heroes. I had planned on coming today and talk to Dan Lagoon, who's the executive director of the Mass Fallen Heroes. He couldn't be here today because he's actually going down to Hingham, and they're bringing home Corporal Christopher Orlando, who passed away. And that's why Dan can't be here. But Dan wanted to be here, and he asked me to be here to testify on a portion, against a portion of the governor's bill, which was House 3907. Now, you heard testimony earlier today from a panel on, there was a home rule petition in one of my districts, one of my communities in my district last year. And just to make one thing perfectly clear, I supported the right to have a home rule petition and to have that home rule petition passed. I did not support the portion and the content in that home rule petition, and that is taking the police out of civil service. Now, the reason I have some real concerns about taking, pulling out of civil service is we need to make sure that we protect our veterans. I was very concerned last year when this went through. We had veterans that had gone over to Iraq and Afghanistan and other places to fight and protect us. 1% of our population have made that risk to protect us, and they expected to come back and have the opportunity to go into a public service position, fire and police. That was taken away from them while they were away. I think at this time it would be irresponsible for us to take and allow communities to pull out of civil service without at least having some type of safeguard to make sure our veterans, who, by the way, my dad was one of them, coming back from World War II, and I think we've had civil service from 1880, so most conflicts that we've had, young men and women coming back from those conflicts had the opportunities to work in good and decent jobs. We're taking that away from them. I got particularly upset because I have a young man that I was in this building 5 years ago, and he was honored. He was given a Silver Star for his heroic action in Afghanistan. And today I talked to him, we're still trying to get him a job. He wants to be a firefighter. He was a nurse, went into a truck that flipped over and saved 4 people while he got shot and wouldn't leave. But when he filed for a job at Massport, he was told he was not qualified to do the job. I wonder what you need to be qualified to do the job. And by the way, he's a paramedic. So not only was he a paramedic, not only is he's a hero, but he's even qualified because of their policy. We need to make sure that our young men and women that serve, sacrifice for us, have the opportunity to get good and decent jobs. Today's paper, I think they said that the people that are still unemployed at a high rate were minorities and veterans. Today's poll, you still have veterans that are unemployed at a high rate. And this bill, if this passes, we're going to allow cities and towns to just pull out of civil service, eliminate veterans' preferences, eliminate, more importantly, disabled veterans that get shot or injured at least have a section in the law that says they will be the last to be laid off. If we're going to do this, we need to send, I believe, to do legislation that says to most of the cities and towns to get money from us, get local aid, get all types of assistance, get protections, that we have to put a provision in there that notwithstanding the provision of any general and special law to the contrary, we have veterans preference for all of the communities throughout the state to allow them to have the opportunities and that they deserve. If they're going to risk their lives for us and for our freedom, then they should have the opportunities to have the jobs. So with that, I would like to just have Jesse, again, from the Mass Fallen Heroes, does a great job making sure that he protects not only the survivors, but the men and women that are coming back from Afghanistan. Briefly say why he thinks this is important.
Thank you. So my name is Jesse Flitter. I'm a veteran outreach coordinator for Mass Fallen Heroes. I'm also a veteran and a firefighter that's actually gone through the civil service hiring process. So I understand firsthand how important it is to return veterans. My day-to-day activities with Mass Fallen Heroes, I see several people per week going through that civil service hiring process. And that's an important process for every veteran that's returning home because they went into the service expecting that right when they came home, and now it seems to be trying to be taken away from them through backdoor legislation instead of bringing it before the people of Massachusetts, because the citizens would agree that veterans deserve this preference. This bill would exempt cities and towns all statutes within Mass General Law 31, including Section 26, which gives Gold Star family members, disabled veterans, and veterans hiring preference for civil service employment. Municipalities' greater influence should not trump the rights of veterans and Gold Star families earned with their sacrifice. Provision 241 would also deny the rights of surviving children of firefighters and police officers killed or permanently disabled in the line of duty from receiving preference in placement on all entry levels civil service eligible lists. Civil service offers a fair and impartial appeals process for applicants who are bypassed or not hired by the hiring authority. Without Chapter 31 protections, this appeals process would not exist. That's a very important point because we see veterans that are discriminated against with civil service and by hiring authorities all the time due to their disability status or what they saw when they were in the service. 241 is enacted, cities and towns will not be required to have a fair and impartial appeals process. Hiring authorities will be able to deny employment with no recourse offered and no oversight from neutral officials or the state. Though Provision 241, which is the Civil Service Act, has been written so that cities and towns will be able to opt out of civil service, Mass General Law Chapter 31, in the hopes of diversifying their ranks, as brought to you earlier by the town manager of Gloucester. It will also destroy the countless other statutes contained in Chapter 31, such as fair and competitive promotions, retirement protections, fair grievance procedures, impartial appeals boards, layoff criteria, as the Senator said, disabled veterans will not be laid off as it is under civil service, and many other important criteria. These statutes that were written and passed into law in order to provide those in our community that sacrifice for our city, our town, and our state, and our country a path to a well-paying job with bedrock principles of fairness, efficiency, and the efficiency of state and local governments. Providing clear-cut criteria, procedures to ensure fairness in the hiring process, the disciplinary process, and the promotional process. Layoff criteria and retirement benefits is vital to the health of state and local government. Allowing cities and towns to exempt from civil service without passing special legislation or the home rule petition with the reasons why these rules should not apply would fly in the face of fairness and transparency. We feel that civil service has been underfunded and understaffed for far too long. Instead of abandoning it, we should embrace civil service and the ideals it upholds and protects. We would ask that we increase the efficiency of civil service by reinvesting in it, increasing funding, adding staff to the department will allow the same impartial process to operate faster and more efficiently. We recommend creating a position within the civil service to be held by a veteran that could use his or her understanding of the military to allow civil service to better serve veterans and increase awareness of the civil service process to veterans of color around the Commonwealth. Civil service needs a veteran liaison specially equipped to handle specific questions relating to military service, veteran status, disabled veteran status, and veteran makeup exams, and military documentation requirements. This would streamline the process within civil service, making it more efficient for veterans to apply for positions and alleviating some of the workload on veteran-related issues. As an example, I mean, it was held up earlier as almost like a guiding light, is the new policy from the town of Burlington for hiring police officers. It's a ruse to say that if you score 70% or above, you're getting some sort of special consideration. You're just being allowed to go to the next, to the next section of their hiring process. And they offer no preference in their new policy. There's none. Your military service is not held in any special place. You're just another person. They can bypass you and move on to the next person without any reason. So that, I don't know, that should not be held as the standard. This is what's wrong with cities and towns opting out of civil service. Civil service was enacted with National Law 31 to ensure hiring and promotional process was fair and that nepotism and political correctness did not delegate who was best to do the job being offered. Cities and towns are allowed to opt out of Chapter 31 in civil service. There will be no criteria to ensure the best candidate is getting the job, no criteria for an appeals process, no independent body deciding these important cases. Cities and towns will be able to hire who they want, when they want, for whatever reason they see fit. This act, to pass this act, is to remove all oversight, all impartial treatment by the state. The statutes within Mass General Law 31 were passed into the legislature with the purpose of fairness and transparency. Civil service provides uniform practices making the hiring process equally fair to every citizen, regardless of race, gender, religious persuasion, or creed. The military is open to everybody. So if you want this job, you can become a veteran, and you can get it as according to law as it's written now. And I would just like to end on one last point. I've talked to the VFW, Department of Massachusetts, the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts, Massachusetts Veteran Service Officer Association, and I'd like to tell you that everybody is opposed to this legislation. Every single one. So,
If I could just finish it off, Jesse, if I could just finish it off, I had asked the committee, Public Service Committee and the Veterans Committee to hold a hearing, which I think is scheduled, because of the practices that are going on right now throughout the state on bypassing veterans. Cities and towns right now are bypassing veterans, and we are bringing in, we like to bring in HID, bringing others to show what's going on throughout the state. I think it's shameful, because when a big city police commissioner can make a statement that policing in Blue is not like policing in his city, he's absolutely wrong. So I think that we're going to ask those questions, and I believe we're going to have a hearing. And I would be only too glad to take any questions on this, and I'm sure that as well.
Thank you, Senator Jesse. Thank you for your service. Thank you. Any questions? We're joined by Representative Dubois from Brockton. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
John Nelson, testify on one bill, the reauthorization of another bill.
Sure.
And we can ask some of the testimony already, but Steve crosses one.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chairman, Senator Timothy, Honorable Chairman, Representative James Murphy, and other distinguished community members. My name is John Nelson. I'm a police officer for the city of PB and a member of the Legislative Committee of the Massachusetts Coalition of Police. Massachusetts Coalition of Police, AFL-CIO, represents over 4,200 members across the state. Massachusetts Coalition of Police submits written testimony today in opposition to House Bill 3907, an act to modernize finance and government. The last paragraph of the bill eliminates the need for special legislation to remove specific positions from the civil service process. Currently, under the Home Rule petition special legislation model, communities would have to bring this to town meeting and or conduct public hearing prior to submitting the Home Rule petition to the legislature. Our concern is that we do not believe the community involvement step should be eliminated. Removal of any position from civil service should be with full notice, transparency, and participation from the community, not from a quick voice vote from the community select persons or city council. This current language would be abused by some communities to remove their public safety personnel from civil service with no input from the people who are ultimately affected by the decision. The Massachusetts Coalition of Police respectfully request that this portion of the bill be removed and the current process of requiring a home rule petition remain in effect to prevent the unilateral elimination of civil service for public safety personnel without participation of the public. I'm also here to testify favorably on the following bills: House Bill 2229, House Bill 2230, House Bill 2236, House Bill 2237, House Bill 2256, House Bill 2314, House Bill 2327, House Bill 2399, House Bill 3885, Senate Bill 1363. The Massachusetts Coalition of Police respectfully request that this honorable committee vote these bills out of favorably. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anything else, Tony?
That's it, sir.
Any questions? None? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Paul Locker and John Daly.
Good afternoon, Chairman Murphy.
Good afternoon.
Members of the committee. For the record, my name is Paul Larkin, I'm a retired police captain from Cleveland, Mass. I'm simply listed as a worker for the Police Association. I have with me Tom Daly from the Worcester Police Department, our local 911, also executive vice president of the Normal Police Benevolent Association. Very quickly, Mr. Chairman, we are here to testify in favor of several bills and in opposition to one. We are in favor of House Bill 2229, House Bill 2230, House Bill 2274, House Bill 2327, and House Bill 3904. I'd also like to talk very quickly in opposition to House Bill 3907, and I know you've heard quite a bit of testimony. We have provided copies in writing of our testimony, so certainly my remarks will be brief. As history shows, House Bill 3907 is sponsored by the governor, and it's only part of a large-scale bill filed to modernize, it's intended to modernize and streamline many laws and procedures here in the Commonwealth. And for the most part, the membership of the NEPBA supports the governor in his efforts. However, HB 3907, specifically Section 5, is not one of them. Civil service law has been in existence since 1884, and the purpose of the law is the same today as it was 132 years ago. I congratulate Senator Donnelly for pointing that out in my previous speakers also. No community is forced to belong to adopt a law. It's a local option law. It's only adopted not by the fiat of an elected body or an administrator, but by the will of the community. First by a petition supported by 5% of the population, and then by a majority vote in a public or regular town city election. The proposed legislation as written runs exactly contrary to that, and will take from the people their support at the ballot box. It will instead allow a political body to, with a single swipe of a pen, without input from either the public or the municipal workers who will be impacted, to remove it. In the same way civil service is adopted, it can be rescinded in one of two ways, each allowing for public input. First way is by default, it is following the same process to adopt it, local election. The second is by home rule petition. Most importantly, both of these formats provide for public notice. Now, you heard a list of benefits that this law provides, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but there are very specific benefits for our, for our veterans, our disabled veterans, for children of police officers and firefighters that were killed in the line of duty, for layoff protection, and statewide reemployment for layoffs. Okay, and also for assurances that promotions are not due, will be based on merit and not for political means. With this in mind, I would submit to this committee the following question. Since the law provides voice to our citizens and protections to our employees, veterans, and disabled, why must such a drastic move be made that allows appointed or elected officials to simply do away with it, and essentially protections that are far more beneficial than detrimental? I would also like to add, I listened intently to Mr. Friedman from Burlington, and I noted that how, even though I disagree with the home rule petition and agree with what Senator Donnelly said, how they negotiated to get the home rule petition passed, or to ask the legislature to ask for a home rule petition. The provisions of the law as written doesn't talk about any negotiation, doesn't talk about talking to the public, simply says they can be voted on. So based on these facts, the membership of the New England Police Benevolent Association is requesting that the committee to vote unfavorably on the issue, 3907. We thank the committee for allowing us to enter this testimony into the record, and we'll gladly answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you. You want to add anything? Else, any questions? No? Thank you very much. Roberta and Bridget. You wanted to come together, right? Okay. Good afternoon.
Thank you to the committee, thank you Chairman Murphy for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. My name is Roberta Suleman, and I'm the president of the board of directors of the Massachusetts Coalition for Adult Education and the executive director of the JVC Volunteers of Massachusetts. I'm here this afternoon to speak in favor of House Bill 3390 and to urge this committee's support for this legislation. This particular legislation deals with the opportunity to unionize on a statewide basis for professionals and staff who work at state-funded adult basic education programs. Those programs provide services to approximately 19,000 adults each year. There are more than 100 programs across the Commonwealth. They are community-based organizations, local school departments, higher education institutions, correctional facilities, businesses, and labor partnerships. They provide basic reading and writing, adult basic education, ESOL, citizenship, high school preparation, and college and career readiness. There are approximately 700 staff people who will be affected by this legislation. What we would like this legislation for is for us to be able to do what you heard some of the other speakers today talk about, having a voice in the requirements and the mandates that are imposed upon the state grant-funded programs. Right now, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education sets all the program standards, sets all of the requirements for staffing, sets the grant process, sets the rates for paying for grants, and all of those things affect turnover, working conditions, and ultimately the quality of the programming and the adults whom we teach. The legislation would provide a non-traditional union, which means that it would not be organized on an employer-by-employer basis, but rather on a statewide basis, with the opportunity for the adult basic ed staffers to negotiate with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education as it represents the state. And the items that would be covered are professional development and training, conditions affecting recruitment and retention, programmatic performance review, additional payments to compensate professionals for increases in educational attainment, access for adult basic educators to retirement health and welfare benefits, the grant and contract application criteria and process, the manner, method, level, and structure of both the rate-based and non-rate-based funding provided by the department, and dispute resolution procedures. We believe that these negotiations and the ability to have a voice in these standards is of paramount importance to the stability of the adult basic education field, which has experienced and continues to experience rapid turnover in staff and teachers. That destabilizes programming, it disrupts continuity, it impedes quality, and it has a negative impact on the programs, on the field, as a profession able to continue to recruit new people as the older folks retire out of these positions. And it also has a significant impact on the quality allowed to provided in the instruction to students. I think that what you heard other people say about the reason that they want to have unions and collective bargaining in their school systems in K-12 are the same reasons that the adult educators want to be able to bargain with the entity that sets the rules for the grant programs that we have. And almost all of the adult basic education that's funded in Massachusetts goes through the Department of Education. It's a mix of federal and state money of approximately $40 million in total. So they are the ones who control what happens in adult basic ed, and that's why we'd like to
passage of this legislation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Bridget Quinn, and I'm here from SEIU Local 509, and as Roberta just so eloquently stated, this is going to be a non-traditional type meeting. This is folks coming together who really want to have a collective voice at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We would be bargaining directly with the commissioner. And obviously, any sort of changes in structure, rate of pay would be subject to appropriation by the legislature. So this bill doesn't cost anything. I just wanted to point that out. And we've gotten some questions regarding what this would mean for the members. They would not become state employees. That is not the goal or the intended outcome of this legislation. So they would continue to be, separate from employees of the county.
Thank you. Any questions? No. Thank you very much. Archie, Paul, anybody else want to come up? Sure.
Good afternoon, Chairman Murphy, Timothy, members of the committee and staff. For the record, my name is Paul Jakes, legislative agent for the Professional Firefighters in Massachusetts. To my left is Archie Bono, also legislative agent for the Professional Firefighters in Massachusetts. John Sorrow, legislative agent for Boston Firefighters Local 718. And to my right is Michael Riley, also legislative agent for Boston Firefighters Local 718. We have submitted written testimony, so in the interest of time for the committee, we won't read through the list of bills, but we do ask that you put them on favorably. We'd like to speak on one bill, on House Bill 3878, an act relative to firefighters in the town of Concord. On behalf of Concord Firefighters Local 1942, we have submitted written testimony and ask that you also put that on favor.
Sure, thank you.
We do have opposition as well to House Bill 3907 from the governor and act to modernize municipal finance and government. Michael Riley's going to speak on that, but I'd just like to say a couple words myself. As you heard earlier, the civil service is broken and needs to be fixed. I just wish that there was as much effort given to fix civil service as there is to file bills such as this and to communities to get out of civil service. I really believe that if it was fixed, the money and stuff was put into it, that it would work as designed for all parties involved. It was also mentioned earlier that civil service places barriers for cities and towns. Those barriers, as they were so called, we look at them as a process for fair hiring and fair protections for our members. And, so I don't want to steal Mike's thunder, but it's not thunder. But that's what I'd say. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Murphy, Chairman Timothy. My name is John Sorrow, and I'm one of the legislative representatives for around Local 718, the Boston Firefighters. Today, we supplied written testimony. In the time of interest, we'd like to defer from reading the long list of bills that we support, but we'd ask for the committee to favorably report favorably at the committee, please.
Sure. Thank you.
Last but not least, thank you for this opportunity to testify. I actually have a pretty good testimony in my head, but Senator Donnelly and Jesse, kind of said it all. Just to kind of reiterate a little bit, on the record, my name is Michael Riley, agent for Boston Firefighters Local 718. We would like to go on the record as being in opposition to House Bill 3907 and in particular the civil service piece. As Paul said, and it was alluded to earlier in testimony, probably the only thing I agree with the administrator from Burlington is that civil services, it is broken. It's sometimes a little frustrating to deal with, but hopefully that, as Senator Donnelly said, we can get the committees together as something to take those emotional exams and these interesting things and try to figure it out and put that product out there. But I also do believe, in my opinion, that this is a rule, like Jeff said, killed or 100% disabled in the line of duty, which would mean to be responding to, working at, or returning from, a specific incident. You get survivor. If you go to the top of the survivor list, you also lose that. So we need to protect our veterans. We need to protect our survivors, and hopefully that this will get a negative report. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Archie?
Chairman, I guess I am pleased, as he said, thank you for allowing me to speak in front of you, and thank you for serving on this great committee. As we've said, we have a long list we support, and we ask them to come out favorably. But we have to strongly oppose the Governor's Act to modernize municipalities. To me, it's not an act to modernize, it's an act to crush the employees of those municipalities. And that's the way I feel at this point. By taking away civil service, it's basically, what can I say, they get to a point where they want those positions. As they state, whether you get a 70 or an 80, or if you're a veteran or not, they'll bring you to the next step. Okay? Well, the next step may be off the table, out the door, in the trash. Doesn't mean you're going to follow through with anything. We've seen that all too well in different areas. So we strongly oppose that, and as we do other items in the governor's modern municipalities and that. So I thank you for your time. I can move on, but I will not. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry I had to step out during our service testimony. I'm sure I would have had some insight. I guess the two things I would appreciate, though, is, because we've spoken offline about how to fix civil service and ideas when we contracting people who are in college or studying public service, public safety type stuff, that they should be taking an exam to increase the pool. I'd love to see if you guys, you said you have more lists of issues with the governor's bill. I'd like to see that. I mean, if it could be written testimony, because I'm trying to understand all sides of the issue, and I think that so the civil service piece is, as well, where you stand on that, but looking at those retirement benefit revisions, some of them probably are good for municipalities, maybe not good for members. It is a balancing act, so I would encourage you to submit some more written testimony so we can have both sides of the issue. So if you are going to even work on that bill and move it in any way, the only way we're going to be able to fix it is if we have some ideas. Right? So I would personally appreciate it, and I'm sure the committee would as well. But if you do have some real solid ideas, maybe have a tweak or fix, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ray and Jim? If anybody else has to sign in, this is another sheet I don't have. This is the end of the sheets I have. Does anybody want to testify that hasn't? No? Anybody else? There's going to be a couple more, Mr. Chairman. Okay. All right, sounds good. Gentlemen?
Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, my name is John Brown. I represent the National Association of Government Employees and the International Board of Police Officers. We signed off at the end because we had so many bills we were going to talk about, but we should sign off at the beginning because so much was talked about. But we do have a list that we give to the committee on bills that we support, particularly dealing with collective bargaining issues that are before you. But the one bill you've heard a lot about is House 3907, which is obviously something we were going to speak against. For the most part, not every part, but for the most part. First of all, the section in here that deals with the OPEB, the cost of retiree health insurance. Cities and towns address that issue. We think it's a premature issue currently because the rules and the guidelines have not even been developed by GASB or OPEB to determine how it's going to affect it. And it's one of those issues like a mortgage. It costs you money, yes, but you have to spend it all right now. And where does the money come from to put into the OPEB funds? It comes from the pot, which every city and town you're going to be hearing from in the next couple of months doesn't have enough money to begin with. So then they're going to cry that they don't have the money. One of the speakers spoke earlier about a bill you did last year, and you brought attention to the fact that it was the lady from the Mass Municipal Association that you did a bill last year to try to address the issue, and they're coming back this year to further address the issue. And I've been here for 30 years. I've had experience listening to the Mass Municipal Association, and that seems to be their mantra. They'll come in today for one thing, and then try to expand it later. That doesn't deal with this particular bill. Mr. Cronin, I believe his name was from the administration, he got up here, and his first comments were, his name obviously, and then he said he had 17 years experience in municipal or government service. I think he said municipal government service, and 1 year with the government. Well, I had 35 years of service in municipalities. I served on the city council of the city of Worcester. I served on the Civic Center Commission in the city of Worcester. I was on the retirement board in the city of Worcester. So I've got a lot of experience as well as it relates to municipal government, and how it functions and how it runs. And the process of the civil service system. When I became a police officer in 1970, I took the test in February. February 15th of 1970, I took the test to become a police officer. I'm not a veteran. I took the test on October 11th, 1970. I was appointed to the Worcester Police Department. So you think, February to October. That's how civil service ran when it ran properly. You took your test, you went through your process, you were vetted by the city or the town, you got your scores, you did all your things. That's when civil service, and I think a lot of people here were talking about, it's not the civil service system, it's the way it's operated, the way it's administered, or funded is basically the bottom line. So I think it does work if you have it. It was created by a Republican president prior to his presidency. Well, it was actually created by a Republican president, and the first civil service commission in the United States was a guy named Teddy Roosevelt. A president was killed because of public corruption. A man who wanted to become a postal worker didn't get the job. He was a veteran. He shot the president and killed him. And they said, we gotta do something. We gotta create a system that protects the public from political interference in the operation of government, in the hiring of people. So they created the Civil Service Commission. Like I said, Teddy Roosevelt was the first Civil Service Commissioner in the United States. Massachusetts came along right thereafter. So civil service works if you want it to. The governor's bill, however, I find a little disingenuous. So I want to just read one thing if I might. If I can, I forgot my glasses. We are proud tonight, we are joined here tonight by Corporal John Dawson's parents and Gunnery Sergeant Tom Sullivan's parents. Last year, they both lost their lives in the service of our country. This is from the speech last Thursday night. Every man and woman who serves in combat are special, and their families are served as well. Your presence reminds us what service, sacrifice, and loss is really all about. And really that's why veterans have preference. Exactly what the governor said. Yet, he filed a bill that eliminates that recognition. And it's almost entirety because cities and towns don't want to have to deal with the bill. I noticed that the Burlington town manager gave a nice explanation as to how they processed their new testing system. And how we talked about the 271 people who applied for the job and how they broke it down, till they got 17 people out of 271. And then they broke it down further. And they had one guy, and he sounded like a great guy. He was a Muslim. He spoke 3 languages. He went into the Marine Corps, but for medical reasons, he didn't become a veteran. So they really wanted to get that guy. And he did get hired by them. But nobody didn't mention. Of the ones they did hire, how many were veterans? He talked about the veterans. He talked about everybody that applied. But he never mentioned how many veterans they hired. Out of the 7 or 10, whatever they hired. He never mentioned that word. So if he went through all of that effort to describe how they went through this process, and how they had this equity and fairness, and he talked about a woman as well, a female police officer. But he never mentioned if they hired a veteran. So I wonder, did they hire a veteran? Or were all their candidates non-veterans? I don't know. I haven't got the answer. But to me, it seemed a little disingenuous that he went through all that process but never mentioned who was actually hired at the end, veteran or non-veteran. Veterans deserve attention. They deserve their rights. But civil service is not created for veterans. The civil service was created to protect the public from the political arm of the government at the time. And that's what it's for. I believe in the protection of veterans. I believe in the protection of disabled veterans. I believe in the hiring process thereof. But I also believe that that's not the real foundation of civil service. The real foundation of civil service is protecting all the people that you work for, that I used to work for, and that all public servants work for, the people. Not every state has civil service, but Massachusetts happens to be one that does. And I think it's done a wonderful job in its protection of the rights of the people. It's done a wonderful job in providing excellent officers, female, male, firefighters, correctional officers. It's a thing that protects the people from basically the people. But it is necessary. Let's fund civil service. That's the way to go. Let's not ignore civil service. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and distinguished staff. I am here, as Ray said, we are going to be submitting a number of bills that we support, mostly support. There were a group of bills that we did want to go on the record relative to the MWRA, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask you all to keep in your thoughts and prayers 5 mage members who went to the hospital yesterday as a result of the explosion out in Quincy. And I think there are 3 issues that we bring before this committee every year relative to the MWRA. I think in moments like this, really allows us to sort of shed a little light and sort of remind everybody that these are dangerous jobs, particularly when we talk about retirement and Group 2 piece, which was heard back in May. But the 2 pieces before you today have to do with collective bargaining, obviously has to do with management rights clause. There are 5 bills that basically seek to accomplish 2 goals. House 2247, 2248, and Senate 1412 seek to, right now under the management rights piece, the management has unilateral authority for hiring, promotions, and terminations. This language, along with just cause, which is the second piece of this, they do not have a just cause provision in the enabling statute. Those bills are House Bill 2244 and Senate Bill 1410. These 2 provisions were modeled when the enabling statute was passed back in 1984. This was modeled on the MBTA, who's the only enabling statute, the only group of employees that did not have the ability to bargain over these things, did not have just cause protection. I will mention and say for the record that since then, the MBTA's issue has been remedied. Right now, the MWRA, to our knowledge, are the only employees that have this inequity, whereas all other employees in the Commonwealth are on an equal footing. So we would ask you to please report these bills out favorably and put the MWRA employees on an equal footing. Thank you.
Thank you. And my thoughts and prayers are with you. The employees were in Quincy yesterday. What's the status of the latest?
We haven't heard much, other than we've heard the employees are doing pretty well and they're still trying to get to the bottom of what happened. That was the last update we got this morning.
Yeah, we don't have to think of people that do those kinds of jobs. We think about police and firefighters constantly. We should, because that's what we see. But as we spoke to at the hearing previously, these are men and women that work down the poles underneath the ground, protecting the water sources of all of our cities and towns, but these are MWRA people, dealing with chemicals. We don't even know what caused the explosion, equipment, a chemical fire, whatever. So it's always terrible to have this thing happen, but it does bring to light that there's so much more in public safety than just the guys in the blue cars and the red trucks. There's other people that provide a lot of great service that are public safety officers.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Michael, Mike, do you want to have anybody testify?
Yes, we have a couple of folks from the Washington Teachers Union.
Okay.
the opportunity to be very honest.
Yeah.
Would like to speak to the committee.
So good afternoon, my name is Jessica Ting, I'm the organizing director of the Boston Teachers Union, and I'm here to testify in support of House Bill 2265 and action towards collective bargaining to designated schools and districts. And so there are actually dozens of teachers who wanted to be here today, particularly in our 2 level 5 schools, the schools that were taken over by the state and where they've lost collective bargaining rights. One of the greatest negative impacts of the lack of collective bargaining rights that we learned about just from asking the teachers to testify was just the fear of retaliation and fear of getting fired without any real due process, which is, again, a direct impact of the loss of collective bargaining rights in these schools. Thus, I am reading one testimony on behalf of teachers at our level 5 schools, and my colleague will read another, and then we'll submit the rest that were given to us. So this testimony is from a special education teacher at a level 5 school, the Holland, in Boston. So I'm a special education teacher at a level 5 school. I'm unable to take time away from teaching to attend today's hearing, but on behalf of myself and my colleagues, I thank you for investigating this important matter. The lack of collective bargaining rights at my school has affected our ability to educate and advocate for our students. First, as you might expect, we are paid less to work more. The starting salary for an entry-level teacher at my school is $54,000, just marginally above BPS's starting salary. However, at my school, we work 2 to 3 extra weeks in the summer, and we work 3 extra hours every day. When you add this up, we receive a significantly lower hourly wage than our counterparts in true public schools. In addition to our long hours, we regularly miss our planning time and our lunch to attend mandatory meetings, provide substitute coverage, or supervise our classes at lunch, recess, or school events. Some of our paraprofessionals, including those who instruct small groups, are not entitled to planning clocks. Many have struggled to secure a regular lunch break. Neither teachers nor paras are compensated for missing time. Our working conditions, over which we have no say, stipulate that we may, in rare circumstances, miss lunch or planning. In reality, this happens multiple times per week. Additionally, we have restrictions over our time off. August professional development days and testing days are considered blackout days, meaning that staff are not permitted to take a personal day and may be subject to investigation if they call out sick. This encourages an unhealthy school environment for students and teachers. Even more importantly, our lack of collective bargaining results in our students and families losing their rights. We have no say in class sizes, which are based on the middle school model. In 2nd grade, our 7-year-olds are crammed into classes with as many as 26 students, including students with disabilities and English language learners, when the district cap is only 22. During special classes like art and music, separate students join regular education classes, leading to as many as 28 students in a 2nd grade class, decreasing all students' ability to learn. There's little room for faculty or parent voice in policy changes. Our school site council plays only an advisory role and is not consistently informed about major school changes such as updated discipline policies. As teachers, we find ourselves implementing discipline systems that many of us believe violate students' rights, such as isolation periods and loss of recess due to talking in the hallways or forgetting to wear a belt. We can have extra duties added to our job descriptions at any time. Paraprofessionals this year are mandated to perform uniform checks to inspect student attire. Some paraprofessionals expressed feeling very uncomfortable about this duty, which is not written in any official working conditions, but they were told they must do it regardless. My colleagues and I want the best for our students. Without collective bargaining, we have little ability to advocate for those whom we serve. I hope you will consider restoring collective bargaining rights at level 5 schools.
Thank you for having us. Just for the record, my name is Jonathan Rodriguez. I'm an organizer of the Boston Teachers Union. Here reading testimony from a teacher from the Paul A. Dever Elementary School. To whom may concern, this is my 2nd year as a full-time teacher at the Paul A. Dever Elementary School. It is my goal to be a teacher for my entire life. However, after 2 years at the Dever, I am finding that goal to be more and more impossible every day. It is my students that make me want to come to school every day. It is our talented and remarkable staff that help me get through my day at the Dever. Many people who are writing statements today will tell you that they are unhappy, and that is for so many reasons. My heart breaks a little bit each day for the incredible students who deserve to have educators who are not made to feel like they are worthless, who are not deflated after meetings where they are told that their opinions and teaching experience do not matter. Teachers at the Dever are spoken to and treated so poorly. We are critiqued and criticized for our work, but never given support or feedback when we have tirelessly asked for it. I do feel that our principal has, on more than one occasion, tried to change our climate at our school. However, she has been swayed or denied her ability by her receivership blueprint. In a school such as the Dever, experienced teachers are needed to help turn around the school by using their expertise and experiences. There are a handful of people that are making all of the decisions for our school, and when those decisions prove unsuccessful, the blame is put on the classroom teachers. The decisions that are being made for us have created extra hours of work on top of the long extended school day, which are not compensated nearly enough for. Lastly, the lack of peer communication is without a doubt one of the most frustrating aspects of the endeavor. Administrators do not communicate and are often not on the same page. Emails are not responded to even after being told we need to wait 48 hours for a response. And meetings are scheduled and made mandatory after school hours with very little notice. Blueprint initiated a survey system to get teachers' opinions on changes happening at school. Despite the results of the survey, changes are being made that were never presented in the surveys given. Just another example of how teachers are made to feel they are not valued or respected. It is my hope that Endeavor will one day provide students with a successful learning environment. However, this time, that is the last thing that is occurring at this school. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you very much. That's it for the list today. Anybody else want to testify?
Yes, I'd like to testify.
Okay. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Kim Lambert, and I teach career readiness classes for adult immigrants at a community center in Chinatown. And I'm here to speak in support of H3390, an act to improve adult basic education access and quality. Right now, the state doesn't take adult education as seriously as it does K-12. About 70% of the positions in adult education are part-time, and most pay between $17 and $23 an hour. I can tell you that as an adult ed teacher, the future of my career does not look bright. I would love to go back and get a master's degree, but I really can't afford it on my salary. There's no system to reimburse tuition, and I won't be paid more if I get a master's degree. H3390 would help raise standards in adult ed and ultimately result in better quality education for students. It would allow adult educators in positions funded by the State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to form a union and bargain for a contract with DESE, the State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Although adult educators work in positions at different schools and community organizations across the state, DESE is the one that really sets the workload, the salary range, and the standards for the whole field for all of us. That's why we need this non-traditional union, so we can bargain with them directly in order to get real professional development, higher expectations, and better working conditions across the field. Recently, one of my career readiness students met her career goal and got a job as a room attendant in a union hotel starting at $19.36 an hour. And yet, just imagine a lot of my colleagues in adult ed make less than that, and they have bachelor's and master's degrees. This student has a high school education and limited English proficiency. So just compare that my colleagues with bachelor's and master's degrees are making less than what our students are making. And so that's why we need this bill and the right to form our own union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I can do it from here out. Just one. Sean King with Massachusetts Teachers Association. Very quickly, just wanted to be recorded as being in favor of House 2395, an act further regulating the right to strike for public employees. This is one of the bills that our Committee on Government Relations asked that we work on and support, and we've worked with Representative Rushing on redrafting the language to bring it up to date. We ask for consideration.
Mr. Walsh?
John Coleman Walsh, Matthews. First of all, Ralph, I kind of feel, I know we want to thank you and the other members of the committee for the passage of the printed bill. It's very good. Secondly, we really haven't had a chance to look at the governor's bill on the 3907 we'll send the testimony in later.
Sounds good. Thanks very much. Give our best to Ralph.
Yes, I will.
Anybody else? That's it. Entertain a motion to close the hearing. Seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. That closes today's hearing. Thank you.